How you doing, Steph?
I'm great. I love the change of scenery that you guys have going on. The plants are really bringing a lot of life. I have this is a fake plant that I got from the dollar section of Target, I think.
Any kind of greenery I feel helps me just have a I don't know, like a good feeling when I'm
Yeah.
around it. So I do enjoy it. Sometimes I actually sit in here to see my clients instead of my office if there's nobody home because I like being around plants so much. But yeah, no, we're in here today because as you can see, we have a guest today.
Yeah.
Angela Doolin, and we're so happy to have her here. And Angela is a food scientist with a passion for nutrition. But more importantly, to today's topic, finding your belly buddy or finding your village, kind of creating your pregnancy journey village. Angela is also expecting about almost exactly the same time as I am. So we thought it would be a really cool conversation to have all of us together and talk about how people can go about finding people to go through this process with. And additionally to that, Angela is my sister-in-law, so I'm double blessed to have a friend and a family member going through this at the same time. But thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I love this topic and it really resonates with both you and I, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. And for I think folks who are listening, we talked early on about Maria, our relationship, and how um your brother is my cousin. So Angela is your brother, your husband's sister, and also my cousin. So it's really we're keeping it all in the family today, which is so fun. Um, I'm wondering, Ange, would you like to Maria just gave you a beautiful introduction. Would you like to introduce yourself at all? Maybe talk a little bit about the early stages of your pregnancy journey, or any other information about yourself that I don't know, that you would like to share with us?
Sure. So as Maria said, my name is Angela Doolin. I'm so excited to be here. Um, as she mentioned, I'm a food scientist. I have my master's in food science and nutrition from Montclair State University. And yes, I am pregnant. Um, Finding out I was pregnant was a roller coaster of emotions. I had just been married for a month and we were not planning on starting a family this soon, this quickly. I'm very into my faith, so we kind of gave it up to God. We just said, whatever His plan for us, we'll just accept it. We'll be blessed with however many children we have. But there were things that I wanted to do. I wanted to go to Italy. I'm Italian. He's Irish. We wanted to go to Ireland. We had all these plans. We had just gotten home from our honeymoon. We wanted to get a house. And a month into our marriage, I missed my period and took a test. And I remember walking out of the bathroom and my husband was, waiting on the bed, knowing that I went in there for that reason. And when I came out, it was just like tears, just streaming down my face. A lot of fear, a lot of excitement. But it took a little bit of time to really be happy and excited about it because at first it's like, we just got married. Like my
Yeah.
whole life, my whole world just changed, and now it's bam, changing again. Um, and honestly, the thing that made me the most excited and well, one of the things, of course, having a child with my husband is very exciting in itself. But something that really got me there a lot faster was when Maria and I found out that we were both pregnant together. That was just like a surreal moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Would
remember.
you like to talk more about that moment? Yeah.
Yeah, I think off camera we have shared that with you, Steph, that excitement and that moment, but I don't think I've
But
shared
pretend
it.
you haven't because our listeners don't know, and I love this story. So I'll just pretend I'm hearing it for the first time.
So I'll start it off and then I'll hand it off to Ange to finish it up. I had just found out that I was pregnant for the second time, and actually Angela and her husband Jack were the first people we told the first time I was pregnant. So I knew going into this pregnancy that I was going to want to have somebody to be able to talk to about it even really early on because it was scary to go through it again and not know, what was going to happen. Um, so I planned on telling Angela, I don't know, maybe in a couple weeks after I found out I was pregnant, but it had only been about 2 days since I had a positive pregnancy test. So my husband and I were still waiting a little bit. Um, and at the same time, Angela also found out she was pregnant, as she just described. And we did not know that, though. It was very, very, like maybe a day apart, I think. And we had gone to the gym that morning together because we live really close to one another. And we both, I think we did some very minimal working out. And we both kind of were very tired because it was the early on in pregnancy. And we were like, let's just go home. We're good. We did enough today. But that's not completely unusual. That happens sometimes. But what really started this story of finding out about each other's pregnancies, we were going out that night with some friends, and we were going to like a Mexican restaurant that had great margaritas. So I've already been through this process, so I knew that I had to order a drink in order for Angela and her husband not to suspect that I was pregnant. So I did. I ordered a drink. I wound up passing it off to my husband, saying that I wasn't really in the mood anymore for it. And but Angela, having not gone through this before and having only found out that she was pregnant maybe 48 hours before that,
The day before.
yeah, okay,
24 hours.
she wound up not ordering one, which I found strange. Not that she's a heavy drinker, but we were at a really great margarita place. So we move on to a bar after that, and again, she doesn't order a drink, and I can, pass it off to Angela from there.
So that's when Maria started to get real suspicious of me. And when I didn't order the drink at that bar, Maria comes up to me and she says, "You're not drinking tonight." And when I lie, I need to like really prepare myself. I'm not naturally a good liar. So I was not mentally ready or prepared to fabricate some sort of story. So I pause, I say, I just didn't feel like drinking tonight. And at that point, the tears again came, and I grabbed Maria's hand to take her to like the bathroom or somewhere quiet so I can share this news with her. And then she saw me starting to cry, and she's like, "It's okay, I am too." And she just gives me the biggest hug. And then the next part of the story was when our husbands then found out. So my husband went up to her husband, my brother, saying, "Oh, Angela just told Maria that, she's pregnant." And Anthony goes, "No, Maria just told Angela that she's pregnant." And then my brother was like, "Wait, what?" And
That's the best. I love that part. The whole story is so good, but when the husbands are like, "Yeah, my wife just told your wife." "No, my wife just told your wife."
It
The
was
best.
it was definitely a really awesome moment, and one that was so organic. Every other moment we've told people has been planned. So that being unplanned and something so unforgettable was really special.
yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh. So you guys told each other, you told your husbands told each other, so the four of you all knew. Obviously, not many other people knew. I remember when you told me, which was amazing. It's not really a story to go into. It was on FaceTime. It was very emotional and beautiful. But I guess what I would love to hear you talk about on this podcast is like in your journey from that sharing the news with each other forward. This episode is about finding a belly buddy, right? Your village. what has it been like to go through this together? And like, I know, Maria, you've said before, and Ange, I've heard you offline say before too, like how amazing it is to have a buddy who's going through this at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about that and about like the ways in which having another person go through this at the same time has been helpful to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I could again, I'll start
Yeah.
and pick it up, and I could pass it off to Ange and she could compare and contrast notes at that point. Um, for me, I think in the last episode, Steph, we had spoken about how my experience come around 8 weeks of being pregnant really took a little bit of a nosedive in terms of mental health for me, just because of the way the symptoms presented, of the pregnancy symptoms presented, created such anxiousness for me, and I wasn't expecting that. And having somebody to be able to call and say, "This is what I'm experiencing today. Are you also experiencing this?" Was invaluable, right, for me. It didn't immediately take away the anxiousness that I felt, but it certainly lessened it to a large extent. Um, we were experiencing the same symptoms, very close in step with each other. That is not necessarily how most people experience going through pregnancy with a friend or a family member. I think it is extremely, and it's an extremely wide range of symptoms that you can experience, not only different symptoms, but the severity of each symptom. For Ange and I, we had, like I said just a second ago, very similar experiences with our symptoms, which really did, I think, help. And had we not had, and we could talk about this a little later, but had we not had that similar of an experience, I think still would have been really helpful to have Ange there to bounce off of. But I probably would have been like, oh, why does she feel so great and I can't get out of bed, right? Um, but even so, having a person to talk to about it, to ask about what their experience has been in their visits with midwives or their doctors, whomever they're seeing, was really, really, really helpful. And then of course, sharing in the excitement part of it is just all positive for me, right? Having the ability to have to call each other and be like, what names are you thinking about? Or did you feel the baby kick yet? Or how are we going to tell like our parents? Right. All of that had been such a blessing to be able to go through together. But you could speak to your experience of it as well.
I mean, everything I would say would just be echoing what Maria has already said. Very early on, feeling any sort of like weird twinges or cramps or stretches or whatever, um, my immediate thought was, oh no, something's wrong. But having Maria to call and she's like, oh yeah, I felt that yesterday. Everything's fine today. It just gave me such a sense of peace that, okay, this is normal. She's okay. I'm okay. I don't have to stress about this. Um, I mean, we were at the midwives together for one of our appointments. That was awesome seeing like their sonogram and my sonogram, like, seeing them next to each other. There have been times where I've texted Maria saying like, hey, I forgot to ask them this. Like, can you, because you're going today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then the excitement with family has just been amazing. And also thinking forward to now our children are going to grow up together and just starting to picture what that's going to be like. That's just added even more to the excitement,
Yeah.
um, for our futures.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I will add is for people who may be listening is, when one of my specialty areas for my profession is perinatal. And before I was ever pregnant, I would hear stories about what they were going through and morning sickness and pregnancy loss and pregnancy anxiety and all of these different things. And I could empathize given my ability to empathize as a therapist. But a lot of people have told me over the years, it's really not something you could fully understand unless you're going through it. And I didn't fully understand what they were talking about until I was going through it. Um, it's really just a very strange experience. While beautiful, while all of those things. I think I might have mentioned this in the last podcast. Like some people experience pregnancy and it's like the best thing that they've ever gone through. It's not really for me that experience, right? It's cool and I'm grateful for it, but it's not all magical, right? It's not Instagram worthy most of the time. um but I think that that's okay, and having somebody to see that she was, waking up looking like I was waking up, how I was waking up, and being like, all right, I this expectation of beauty that you might have for pregnancy, or the expectation that everything just goes like as planned and it's normal and everything feels okay, those are probably unrealistic. And something that is helpful to have somebody to
Yeah.
bounce off of with.
Yeah, and to that point, I'd like to share a very quick story, which is I'm very lucky. I'm able to work from home. And one day Maria called me and said, like, can you just please like be with me? Just like, can you please work from my house? So I'm like, yeah, of course. Think my brother might have picked me up because I was so sick I couldn't drive. I remember I dropped all my stuff right at the front door and we looked at each other and we just started crying because we both felt so terrible. And we just sat on the couch and we cried. And then we felt a little bit better.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm really struck by the similarities that you two are talking about in your experiences and how like grounding and validating and affirming it must be to be able to share that with each other and feel like I'm not alone in this. And I'm also thinking how challenging it would be, and you sort of named this already, but like if you were having opposite experiences where one of you was feeling really quite poorly and the other one was having like an amazing, beautiful, magical time, that might be really hard. Um, I think something that we had said we might talk about today is like it's a very fortunate and lucky coincidence that the two of you are experiencing this together at the same time and in such similar ways. Obviously, you have differences too, but in ways that feel really good to be able to talk about together. And we said we might talk about how folks who may not just organically happen to have a loved one go through this at the same time might find somebody who they could connect with just to talk through and share stuff with. And something that's striking me as we're maybe about to talk about that a little bit is like a person might find someone who's sort of going through this at the same time, but it seems to me like maybe there's more than just finding someone who's on the same timeline as you that you would want to think about. Do you know what I mean? Like it might be helpful for someone to maybe find a couple of people. That way, if it turns out that one person that you connect with is having a really wildly different experience than you don't sort of spiral into that place of, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Do you know what I mean? I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So something I did when I first found out that I was pregnant was I immediately joined a Facebook group. Um, it's a group that all of the women are due the same month. So some people are a little bit, ahead of me by like 4 weeks, but it's still a group of women who are around the same time as me. There are people from all over the world, and people, in this group, they ask questions, they give some really good advice, they give their own personal experiences, whether good or bad. It's a community at this point. I'm seeing people like become friends, like if they live in the same area, which is like really cool. Um, and for me, I've used it as a tool, to search in that group for questions that I might have that maybe Maria didn't know the answer to, or maybe I didn't feel like calling the midwives for, or I wanted a different perspective on somewhere outside of, where I live. That's really been a great resource for me. In addition to, just how many cousins and family that, I have that are going through this at the same time.
Yeah. How many people would you guess are in that group?
Oh, thousands.
Oh, so it's like this is a really, really big group.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I would say maybe 2000, but
Okay. Well, that's still really big. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
To that point, there are then, if somebody's looking for a little bit more of a more intimate group, I have for clients, even of specific ethnicities, things of that nature, if they're looking for people who are really similar to them in some aspects, you can search for groups that are just in your area. I've joined a lot of those groups of moms of where I live, right? Whatever township it is that I live in. And that helps narrow down, as far as location is concerned, it doesn't help narrow down time period of your pregnancy. But it does give you like mom friends potential, right? Which a lot of my clients talk about. Oh, it's really hard to make friends unless you're going to like mommy and me classes and things of that nature. Um, so you could have a group that's expanded to a really like wide net, but close to your gestational age, as far as how far along you are, or you can cast a smaller net to location, so you're more able to potentially meet up with somebody and have real life experiences with them. Um, Something I wanted to just say about this topic is there's this strange dichotomy that I notice in women that in our generation of women, because I think it was a lot more natural. I've spoken about this before for maybe our mother's generation and our grandmother's generation. They didn't have Facebook or Instagram to utilize to connect with people, but they had their community. And that was something that was extremely accessible and utilized. As I said, I think I have spoken about this, but my mom and her sisters and cousins, when they went through it, they all had maybe not exactly at the same time. Sometimes it was in line with each other's pregnancies, but they had each other to depend on and their parents and their aunts and uncles. And I think it became like that village that we talk about very naturally due to the way society was then and the way culture was. Um, Now we don't have that as much, but I say that there's this dichotomy because you'll notice if you put women together who are moms, or if you put women together who are pregnant, they don't have to have anything in common. They don't even have to like each other. They can talk about the pregnancy though and really connect, or talk about their children and really connect about that. And they have this automatic universal connection that is pretty strong because being a mother is something that creates a lot of um, like deep emotions and deep connections with your child and then with other mothers because you naturally want to connect. And that's what Angela was saying about this huge Facebook group. You see it immediately. Women want to know, women want to communicate with each other. And so we want this, I think, naturally as social beings, we want this connection. But because of the way society has gone, and it's not all bad, but I think in this aspect, it has created some distance. And that's what I mean about this dichotomy. So sometimes I find women in my practice who are in this stage of life being very hesitant to connect with others, although they really want to connect with others. And they almost instinctively know that they need somebody to connect with. But there's something holding them back. And that just might be, again, the way society has progressed. So if nothing else in this episode, that is what I'd like to encourage people the most during this period of your life, if you're going through it, is to be able to connect with others and put yourself out there, even if it feels a little uncomfortable at first, because people are out there wanting to connect with you as well. So really just encouraging that just little spark in people if they're feeling a little bit hesitant to do so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I've heard people even outside of the process of becoming a parent, like people who are moving to a new city for the first time, like who really want to build friendships in adulthood. And I think this is a common challenge people face. And I think that you're absolutely right. In generations past, the in-person community spaces were more central or more utilized, more accessible. I even feel like today, a lot of community spaces, you still have to you have to spend money to really like be there, be a part of those spaces. And even like cafes, or I mean, you wouldn't go to a bar if you were pregnant, but like, you know, like spaces like that, like you're not necessarily sitting down at a table with your tea and a treat and like connecting with the people around you. You know, we are very isolated. So I think like I love the suggestion of these like online communities as a way to connect with people, especially when the online community allows you to connect with people in your area where you can take the virtual bond and then bring it into in person and have both. I think that's really cool. Um, and I also think that because those in-person community spaces are less accessible and less utilized than they used to be, it people are more out of practice. And so like taking that risk, Maria, to your point of like being brave, like pushing yourself to make a connection, even if it feels a little uncomfortable or scary, it makes sense that it would be hard for people. And it also makes sense that it would be so important. And I'm thinking it's probably, I mean, you guys can speak to this better than I can because you're going through pregnancy right now, but I'm guessing it's probably easier for new parents to begin building relationships with other new parents during pregnancy than to begin that process after the baby's already come. Because once the baby comes, the busyness of life, the schedule that you end up on, the way maybe you're feeling in terms of sleep and things like that, like might make it more challenging. And I'm thinking that like having some connections now that can maybe last with you through to after the baby is born can probably also be like somewhat of a protective factor against like postpartum emotional challenges that people deal with. So I'm just kind of spitballing some ideas that are coming to me after having heard you say that. But
Yeah, I think that's
yeah.
really well said. I think that's really well said. And um, that is true. I do believe having those connections prior to a child being in your life could provide some protective factors against really difficult emotional experiences that are pretty common, right? So just having those people there. Speaking of, I guess, more difficult emotional experiences and really honing in a little bit just more for a second on the mental health piece, there are also groups that people can join for free through wonderful organizations, right? So one of the organizations that I've found lots of resources on, lots of trainings that I've done for professional growth, but also just for helping clients to find some resources, has been Postpartum Support International. And they don't just support women in their postpartum period. They have groups specific, again, to ethnicities sometimes, specific to if you're pregnant after loss or pregnant through IVF. So they really hone in on, we know this group of people might be struggling with a similar type of emotional challenge. Let's get you together in a support therapeutic kind of environment. It's online. You can access it anywhere. Again, Postpartum Support International. So it's not just your location where you live. However, it is moderated by a professional. So you do have a little bit, like that's an added layer of support in terms of mental health. So I do like to put that out there because these are resources that I probably wouldn't know of if I wasn't in the field. And I think part of this is to be able to create more accessibility for those who might be listening to this.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I love that suggestion. It's great to give people ideas of resources.
It's not always easy to find people to be friends with in the same stage of life as you,
Yeah.
especially as society has changed in that kind of what we were talking about before, in-person interaction kind of way. Um, but that's really, I guess, what we're talking about here is like find your village, find a way to
Yeah.
create that for yourself. And as Ange just said, if it's something you didn't do prior to your child coming, when your child is able to go and be part of a class or like a gym session or something like that, or a mommy and me yoga type of experience. I know lots of people who enjoy those, and you do meet a lot of women through there, and then natural connections, more organic connections can happen if you don't like the online kind of route. But yeah, Ange said it herself. She noticed that women will naturally gravitate towards talking to each other when they see that they have a little one in a similar age range. It's just natural. It's just how we are as human beings. I just don't know that we are given the opportunity to do that as often unless we're purposefully or intentionally seeking it.
Yeah, I think the intentionality seems to be a theme I'm noticing. Like whether people put themselves out there in by like joining a Facebook group or an online community, or whether people put themselves out there by joining a mommy and me class or going to some sort of community space where there's the opportunity to meet other people, regardless of if it's online or in person, it does require that intentionality. Like saying to yourself, I want to build a village for myself. I need support. I need a community of people who I can share about this with. Um, what am I going to do to create that? Because it's pretty rare these days for people to stumble upon it without some sort of intention. If they do, that's great. But a lot of the time, that's not the case.
Yeah, I'd even say that that goes for within your own family. If you are somebody who has a large family, like both Angela and I and you, Steph, we have that already built in as possible just stumbling upon experiences with one another. But as we've talked about, Steph, in prior episodes, if if you're not sharing with those people, they're not likely to share back. It's not as common as I had hoped it would be to share about difficult experiences, even with people who are naturally and consistently in your life. We had spoken about that when it came to how horrible I was feeling in the first trimester. We had spoken about that when it came to how difficult it was to miscarry and just the experience of miscarriage. Noticing that when I shared with people who were naturally in my life, they shared back with me, but there was still intention. That was my way of looking to heal and creating some space for myself emotionally. And in doing so, with that intention, I was able to create more of a maternal focused village within a family that I already have. So I think you bringing up that thread of intentionality is a really good one.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys, so for folks who might be listening who are in my position, the non-pregnant loved one of a pregnant person, wanting to be part of that village, wanting to be a supportive, loving presence. Um, is there anything that you would speak to about like it seems obvious that like having like a belly buddy uh would be meaningful, that you can share what you're going through and hear what the other person's going through. But if you have a loved one who's not going through this, but you still want to maintain your close connection, I mean, this might be an obvious question, but is there anything you can speak to as far as like what has been really positive or maybe in some cases a little bit challenging about connecting with other people in your life who are not going through this right now? And what, I guess the question is like, what feels supportive, and have there been instances where you've experienced anything that did not feel supportive that people could be aware of to maybe avoid, um, anything like that?
I think for me, I would say people reaching out and just like checking in has been awesome. I don't think that I'm the type of person that I try not to talk about myself a lot. And especially with like pregnancy, I mean, that's the only thing on my mind. So I try to be really aware of that and make sure that that's not the only thing I'm talking about to like people who might not care as much as me, to be quite frank, or are not going through it. Um, so having them reach out and ask me has made me feel very supported.
Yeah, it lets you know, like, hey, you're not talking about this too much. Like, I want to hear about it. Please feel free to, it gives you that invitation to share freely without you feeling self-conscious about like having to self-monitor or anything. It's like an open door.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would add to that from an internal perspective, so that was more external, right? Like people who are your loved ones feeling comfortable that we want to be asked questions. We want you to know that you're there, and thinking about how we might be feeling, because sometimes we're not feeling so great, and it's nice to just have somebody ask that. But from an internal perspective, if you're reaching out to friends or family members who aren't in the same stage of life as you, um, not having the expectation that they're fully going to understand what you're going through. I
Hmm.
think you could be disappointed if you do have that expectation, right? Like, let's just talk about my brother, for example. There's never going to be a chance that he's ever going to go through what I'm going through. But that doesn't mean he can't be supportive and listen to me. So having the like a realistic expectation of your loved one or friend, but also telling them what you need, right? So there was times where my husband was away for work, and I would just call my brother and be like, hey, I don't really love being alone for many nights in a row. Can we just have a movie night, or could we make dinner together? And just having his presence there, and basically doing what I asked, right? Like, he just knew that that's what I needed. I need some support in this time period of my life, and being able to follow through with that's support in and of itself. We don't have to talk about pregnancy symptoms all the time with my brother, but there are other ways to support other than conversing about pregnancy.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
What else would you guys like to share? I'm trying to think about, I remember a question I wanted to ask a little while ago, but our conversation moved away from it. It was, as far as having a buddy who is also pregnant, um, do you feel like let me see if I can stumble my way through how I want to ask this. I'm thinking about like the timeline. You guys are on a really similar timeline. Your due dates are like what, a week apart, if that?
2 days.
Yeah, crazy. So I guess, and Angela, you were talking about the Facebook group where all of the members of the group are due in the same month.
Mhm.
So I guess I'm curious about like, in terms of the specific benefits you've noticed of being able to connect with people who are going through pregnancy in the same timeline as you, what do you think like the parameters are around like how close in the timeline it's the most helpful to be? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if you're due a few days apart, if you're due a couple weeks apart, if you're in the same trimester at the same time, like any thoughts on that?
I
Good
feel like
question.
that's a tough question. Because everyone's pregnancy is so different
Yeah.
and we just happen to be the same somehow. Um, I, I almost think that a similar pregnancy would be more important to connect with than a similar time frame.
Hmm.
Because my cousin, for example, um, had a baby, a few months ago, and she had no morning sickness. If we were at the same stage, like giving birth at the same time, I would not be able to connect with her because I was sick every single day. So I almost feel like maybe similar symptoms than a similar time frame. I don't
Hmm.
know.
That was my initial thought too when you first asked the question, Steph. But if there were going to be, like, if I were thinking about it from a therapeutic perspective, I'd probably put people within the same trimester together. I probably wouldn't expand it to too much more unless it was a group about specifically perinatal anxiety, and it's just more of like, encompassing all the fears that can come with becoming a mom. That might be able to connect with any stage of pregnancy. But if we're talking about groups and grouping together, I think trimesters are a pretty natural and probably good time frame to work with. Because there are differences between them. The first trimester is, really exciting for some people. It's not always exciting, but it could be really exciting in the beginning, and then most of the symptoms start if you're going to have symptoms, right? Second trimester kind of lightens up. This is like the general trend. It kind of lightens up with the symptoms. Again, not always. I've had clients who've been sick the entire pregnancy. Um, And, but in terms of the average experience, symptoms lighten up, you feel a little bit more like yourself and they'll have a little bit more energy. Your belly starts to grow. You start to feel things kicking and moving, and it's, weird and awesome at the same time. And then, not that I'm there yet, but third trimester in general, again, the average experience is you go through this energetic experience during second trimester, and then it starts to come down again with discomfort. Not as much morning sickness, they say, but now you're bigger and you're carrying around more weight, and it's hard to tie your shoes, and it's hard to roll over to get out of bed, and things are preparing for labor, right? So I think having that kind of chunking it together would be helpful in some capacity.
Yeah, what you're saying is sort of making me think that it would be great to have a connection with someone who had a very similar pregnancy to yours. But if that person is a bit further along in the journey, I feel like the support ends up being more of like almost like mentor mentee, like not really mentor, but like I think the closer you are, it seems like the more mutual the support can be because each person is sort of looking for that sense of affirmation of like okay, like what's going on with you? Because here's what's going on with me at the same time, versus like if someone's like maybe a trimester or more ahead, that they might be able to say to the person who's not as far along, here's what I experienced, what you're going through is normal, you'll get to this, don't worry, like that kind of mentality. And I'm sure that there is like great value emotionally in being able to offer that kind of support to someone, like that in and of itself is fulfilling. But if that person who's like ahead in the timeline is looking for someone to tell them like, hey, you're okay, like I went through that too. Someone who's like further back in the timeline wouldn't be able to offer that in the same way. So this is just very interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I'm wondering, I'm aware of the time and I'm thinking that we're probably getting close to the end of the time that we have for today's episode. And I'm wondering if there are any ideas or thoughts, anything that either of you have been kind of chewing on or thinking that you might like to offer in this conversation that hasn't kind of organically come up, that you would like to bring up now.
Something that we briefly discussed offline that I'd like to bring up, and we've talked so much about how similar our experiences have been, would be maybe some of the differences,
Mm.
and where it's been maybe a little bit difficult for either one of us to be going through this at the same exact time. So I'll only speak for myself, of course, but something that I've been struggling with, I don't even know if I really talked to you about this yet, but I have a habit of comparing myself to others. So while we are very similar, I do experience anxiety when I hear either Maria or, someone else who's either been through this already, giving advice or saying, oh, this is the baby monitor I'm getting, or this is the uh,
Formula.
thank you. The formula I'm going to use, not this one though, only this one. Like I have this like I get very stressed about that because I I'm taking this, one day at a time. I almost don't want to learn too much because I'll get very fearful of the third trimester of labor, of actually now there's a newborn in my hands. So I almost don't want to learn everything. And I think it also goes back to when, Maria and my brother were trying, and we knew that they were going to be trying. We were not trying, so I was not preparing myself mentally for this. So I've almost entered this phase of um, I just want to see what happens and be surprised. Unless there's some sort of emergency or something I need to be fully prepared for, then of course I would do my research. But most other things, I don't want to be too prepared for, or, overly knowledgeable of, or I don't know. I want to be flexible about things.
Yeah.
But that's something that has caused me some stress, just me comparing myself, where I'm at, how prepared I am, to the people around me who might be more prepared than me. And, it's stopping those thoughts of like, am I going to be a bad mother? No, that doesn't mean that. But, if I let it, it could get to that place. Um, so that's something that I've kind of not struggled with, but it's something that I have to be very aware of and on top of, so it doesn't become something that I struggle with.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes a lot of
That
sense.
is that is a hard one. Yeah. And I I personally try to be mindful because I know that about Angela because we're really close. So I personally try to be mindful of that. Um, if we're having conversations about labor or classes that we might want to take together, I know that that might create some anticipatory anxiety for her, maybe more than it would for me. So I'll ask if it's okay to talk about it. But I think that actually goes. So personally, I also feel very overwhelmed with all the things that you can put on your registry. Like the other night, I was just looking at it because I know that I need to get it done because people are going to start asking, for it. And I was just like getting like physically ill thinking about all the things that are going to be in my house now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like a lot of things that make noise. I mean, obviously, a baby makes noise, but I'm talking like toys and like gadgets and things. I don't love like a ton of technology when it comes to the monitors and things like that. I mean, the amount of like bottle choices and stuff like it is wild
It's
and
overwhelming.
very overwhelming. And everybody has their opinion about it. Now, I'm somebody who typically likes to be able to hear an opinion, take it or leave it, and just appreciate that somebody is sharing with me. And that's generally how it is. But there are those who will like just keep going about their opinion
Yeah, like
and
preach the
yes.
like they're trying to persuade you that what they got you should get instead of
Yes.
just sharing their experience. I feel like that's a great I feel like actionable tip to put out there, especially going back to where we were earlier about like regardless of when you're connecting with someone, regardless of like where each of you are at in your journey, how to be supportive or how to undermine that feeling of support. Like I feel like something that really undermines connection or that sense of being supported is like a that it's almost like a sales. It feels like a sales pitch. If a conversation starts to feel like a sales pitch, let's reel it back in.
I think that's a really, really fair way to say it. That's not to say that it's not appreciated that people want to connect again. I really, for me, and I think even Angela do appreciate that and like that in general.
Yeah.
But for the pregnant woman, it's okay to be like, I don't, I'm good. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, but I already chose this stroller, or I'm not there yet, right? Or I'm kind of just taking it day by day, and I'll get there when I get there. It's okay to assert yourself in that way, and like self advocacy is so crucial during pregnancy. It's even as somebody who is typically pretty good at self advocating, I find that there are times where I was like, why didn't I say something about that? Or why didn't I ask more questions when I was at my doctor's appointment? And you start at like, you kind of really question yourself a lot because it's so new. This is not a normal state to be in. It's normal for our bodies to do this, right? We're made physically to be able to do this, but this is an abnormal state to be in physically and mentally. I really want to put that out there. Like, this is not normal. The things that go on in your body during this time are something that you'll never experience in another period of your life. And it's a very acute period that is wonderful that we're able to do it, but it's not normal. And I think just normalizing that for people it can be helpful. It's okay to feel weird. It's okay to not have as much energy. It's okay to feel overwhelmed about all the millions of baby gadgets that they have out there, because it's new and it's not something that is an everyday experience that you're going to have. So that's what I would say about that. It's a really good point, Ange, because I feel that as well. And I think probably a lot of people do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Well, with that said, I think maybe we could wrap up for today and maybe eventually we can have Angela back on to discuss some more uh, specifics when it comes to supplements and things of that nature, because that's kind of the world that she lives in with her career. And maybe connect out with some nutrition conversations with a nutritionist who has some experience with the perinatal population. But that's for another day. But thank you so much, Angela, for being vulnerable and just willing to talk about your pregnancy so far. Thanks so much, Steph, for asking such great questions. Always fun to have these conversations with you.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I echo Maria and thanks for joining us.
You guys, thank you for having me, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one.
Nice. All right.
All
Well,
right.
with that, let's wrap it here and we'll reconnect again soon.